Welcome to Moving Through and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to sharing inspired journeys of redefining life, vision, and purpose after immense hardship and grief. My goal with this podcast is to give you hope and to let my guest journeys inspire you to make the choice to keep looking up. I'm your host, Carey Conley. Hey everyone, this is Carey Conley, your host of Moving Through and Beyond, the podcast. I am so excited that I get to bring people on that have kind of a similar mission to me, specifically in the world of suicide prevention. And this is a friend that actually was referred to me, so she and I are meeting face-to-face for the first time today. Her name is Suzi Freeman, and she has quite a story to tell, so I appreciate you being here,
Thank
Suzi.
you for having me. I'm glad we could finally make it work.
Right, and last minute. Sometimes
Yes.
That's what works best, right?
That's true.
Yeah, so yeah, we have a mutual friend and got connected because of my history.
Yeah.
Obviously, most of my listeners know, and you know that I've lost two family members to suicide. My husband 9 years ago, and pretty soon will be 6 years losing my 26-year-old son. And so I am on a mission to really change that trajectory, like I know you are too.
Yes.
And a lot of it is stemming from me knowing that my piece in it is to teach people the importance of having a vision for your life, having hope, knowing your purpose.
I agree.
Right? Unfortunately, we don't teach kids that in schools yet.
That's true.
And this is where you come in because you
Yes.
have like all the certifications and just told me you're getting more
Yes.
in neuro-linguistic programming, time techniques, life coach. Now you're getting certified in something else, right?
Yeah. Be a clinical hypnotherapist.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe all of that. All of these modalities I'm learning, sound healing I was just certified in, are ways to help. Because like you're saying, if we don't teach these kids purpose and hope,
Right.
they don't have a direction. And in the meantime, we can't avoid trauma. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Little traumas, big traumas, however you want to place it. So we need to teach the kids modalities and ways to reduce it.
Yeah.
Teach them mechanisms and skills. And that's really what I'm trying to do.
It's so great. We're going to have to talk so much more about this because I just started listening to a book that I'm sure you're familiar with. It's Oprah's newest book, What Happened to You.
I've heard about it, but I haven't read it yet.
Okay. It's one of my favorite books yet. And I think you will love it because she's co-wrote this with a doctor who's pretty well known, and him talking about what happens to the brain when kids go through trauma, and fascinating stuff. I will probably listen to it more than once. So what you do fascinates me, and I started thinking maybe I should start getting some more of those certifications too, right?
Yeah, it was interesting because when I very first started out on this journey, I shouldn't say that. When I very first started out, it was mental performance coaching. I got certified there. That was mostly my boys were in football. I wanted to, it was seeing those things. I'm like, okay, I'm going to deal in that area. But then when one went to the military and the other's like, I'm going to be a police officer, which he is now, it was like, oh, no, that's changed because they're going to encounter a lot of trauma. So mental performance is amazing and needed, but not quite the same.
Right.
So I thought, oh my gosh, I need to be trained for things to help my boys.
Yeah.
Because one day they're going to come to me, or I hope they come to me, with it. I know sometimes I still talk to Kobe. I'm like, what you got going on? He doesn't share a lot, the police officer.
Okay.
Because he's like, I said, just know that I'm here and I can handle it. If ever you need me, I got you. He's like, I know, Mom. I will catch up with you if I need to.
Yeah.
He's been in the field just over a year. So
how old is he?
He is 24.
Okay.
He graduated ASU first and then went into, and he's in Tempe. He's at the Tempe police officer.
Great.
And then my oldest boy's been 6 years in the military.
Wow.
So, so that's where it got started. But, everything I do and the neurolinguistics and all the stuff I learn keeps putting me back to the children. Because when I had my crazy breakdown in 2020, which seems odd that it wasn't that long ago, I'd already been working in the suicide prevention realm. God, I always say prevention. In the suicide prevention realm. But it never dawned on me that my own struggle with suicidal ideation, was really a problem. So I don't know if I fully had told you, but when my granddaughter she turned 2 yesterday. So 2020, when I learned about that, I think it was 21. Sorry, 21.
Okay.
I had a crazy breakdown. It's almost like I lost my whole identity because my whole life from my 20s on was planned around knowing suicide was an option for me. And I made every plan, estate planning. I'd write letters. I'd do all these things just in case. So the minute I was like, okay, she's going to be born soon. No letter. Can't write a letter to my daughter to help her parent. Like, I'm going to need to be here.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's got to go. And it was a wild breakdown. It was Mother's Day.
Okay.
So it was rough anyway because the boys weren't home. It was just a rough Mother's Day and then just that. But, I feel good now. I feel good. And I used my own modalities in my own ways to get through that. Wow. And, friends and therapists. So we're okay now.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we met, the reason we were connected was because of your upbringing. Or you're telling me that you have struggled with that for a really long time. So you want to talk a little bit about that. When did that really start for you?
The first time I can really remember, and it's very vivid, I was in my 20s, barely. I was pregnant with my daughter. And her dad and I, we would fight physically a lot, even through my pregnancy. We're friends now, interesting. But we had gotten into a really bad fight. And I was like, that's it, I've had it. And I was driving away just to go up north or do something. And I remember, I don't know if you're familiar driving up to like Sedona, that area, Flagstaff, there's a bloody basin, the road.
Okay, yes.
I saw, and I was like, that would be a perfect place to just drive off the road and just be done. But then I was like, oh, well, what if it doesn't kill me? Like, what if it just kills the baby? Or what if, and so all these things. So that was when I very first started thinking. And then I don't know if that moment was just then it always kind of became, I don't want to say a comfort because that's a terrible thought to put on it. But it just kind of was like, okay, I know it's there as an option or a thought, and I'll just kind of plan around that. But I never had an active, I can say later, in my 40s, early 40s, as things just kind of got difficult here and there, which when you look at life, it probably wasn't that bad. But there were times when I bet if I had full access, easy access to a gun, I don't know if I would still be here. But I didn't. And, like they say, statistically, it's 11 seconds. Just give that bit. And so I was like, oh, because, you just get in that, well, I couldn't say you get in this moment almost like a little dark, quick, fast where you're like, that's it. I just can't do it anymore. Everybody will be better off. Everybody. Yeah. Especially when I'm like, okay, life insurance is in place, estate's in place. Everybody will be totally better off. You just feel like a complete loser.
It's common. Yeah. And I know both my husband and my son probably thought the same thing. That, I'm just too, they'll be better off because I'm mentally not good. I'm not happy.
Right.
They're now worried about me. I'm creating problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want people to know that are listening that could not be more further from the truth, of course.
I couldn't imagine right now Everly being 2, now the new grandbaby, my daughter, the twins, they're 12. I can't imagine what their life would be like if, 3 years ago I were to have ended it. That would be devastating. 5 little lives would have been destroyed.
Yeah.
For no reason.
Right.
Because, we're thriving and life is so fun now. Yeah. So fun.
So you've had thoughts of that more than once, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think would be the one thing that stopped you in those 11 seconds, Suzi?
Having the time, for one, for it to just kind of pass for a second and go, whoa, yeah, that's, I guess to be gross about it, it's like, well, who would clean it up? Who would find it? Who would just all those things then start kicking in, and then it's kind of like a reality, like, oh, well, this is not very practical, right?
Yeah.
So I think kind of things like that. For me, if it's, I don't know if it's too graphic, cut it if you need, but I would have been more of a gun person. Really, that I didn't ever, that or driving off a cliff. I had no other thoughts of how. Right. So it would have been messy.
I think that's interesting how your brain went there.
Yeah.
Of the afterthought, which I think is hard for people to understand because when you get to that point where you're just like, I'm done, this is it, I'm out. Right. I think most people would think they would never think about the after. Right. They just,
Yeah.
And I think, so in my case, my husband very much planned it out.
Oh, okay.
He, when he passed, both of them shot themselves. he had left the cash box out on his desk with a key. He didn't leave, neither one of them left a note. But everything, I could tell he'd been thinking this out for a while. My son, I believe, totally snapped.
Okay.
Just got into a situation where he just was, it'd been building and he was going to go in and do one thing. And I think something happened and he just, in those 11 seconds, just.
Got you.
So I think it's interesting for people to know that because people always ask me, did you see it coming? Mm-hmm. And I tell them it was a complete shock both times.
Okay.
Obviously, I knew they were struggling.
Yeah.
And I was helping them through some stuff, both of them with work things mostly. Identity, wrapped up in their identity.
Yeah.
But to think that they would have taken that step, I would have never in a million years thought they would have done that.
Right.
And it's so interesting to me how you're saying in those 11 seconds, one thought changed the trajectory of you not doing what you thought you were going to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I can only think of a couple moments that were really like that close. And it was, I think when I had that initial feeling that put me in that space, it was that I'm just, whatever was going on, I don't even remember at this point all of the stuff, but it was, I'm such a loser. They're got to be ashamed of me. It would just be best, right? Just so much easier. Because I think I said it in one of my that TEDx talk I did was because I had my estate and everything so well planned, it would have redeemed my disorganization and chaotic life and stuff. They'd have been like, oh, mom's not a loser. She did have her shit together, right?
Wow.
It was kind of like that.
Yeah.
So, my estate. And my husband, he didn't think anything of it through us making change. Like if we swap life insurance, oh my gosh. My first question's like, how long do you have to wait for suicide? He just thought it was like, it's weird. Because I do weird stuff sometimes. Yeah. It never dawned on him. We swapped twice, so he never thought about it. I'd write letters and stuff like before we do trips or other things. So he just thought it was, I guess, good planning.
Yeah.
But he didn't know. And I had to do that TEDx talk in October 21. And I was like, oh God, he's coming with me. So I have to practice. He's going to hear me. So I invited him and my best friend to our bedroom. Okay. And I gave the talk. And they both just sat there like,
so
what?
They had no idea you'd been having these thoughts until then? Wow.
No. And literally he sat there and he was like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Now all the dots connect.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that. Because especially after my husband, I could go back, Susie. I met my husband in high school, so we were together for a really long time. And my husband was super outgoing, loved people, loved life, very successful, very well respected. Nobody would have ever seen this coming, right? But afterthought later is I can now look back on certain moments in time in our relationship where he was off, and then start connecting the dots, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me because I was going to ask you that. Who did you talk to when you had these thoughts?
No one ever.
No one.
No one. And you know what else is very weird? Up until like 2016, 17, my view on people that were suicidal was like, that's, let them do what they want to do. Shame on them. Really. And now that I think about it, that was probably me, like ridiculing myself. Yeah. Right? So it's just, I had the odd outlook on it. I was like, you do you then, that's your problem. Yeah. I didn't have any empathy for them.
Yeah, and same. When we as a family of 4, beautiful, all-American family. Yeah. And we would hear about somebody taking their life, there was an opinion attached to it because we didn't know what we didn't know.
Right.
And I think that's really interesting how we change perspective. And I think people need to know that too. And I think that as a culture, I think it's changing a lot because there's so much focus now on mental health. Right. Right? Especially with kids. Yeah. And I know that you are doing so much work in this area for teens. So I want to.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
It is not easy. Yeah, it is not easy. I would say my biggest roadblock is actually the parents.
Yeah.
They don't want to believe it.
Yeah.
And they, from
Not
me
my
doing more
child.
research, it's this fear which creates denial.
Right.
So now I'm really trying to focus on that aspect sometimes, because I'm not kidding. I'll have parents that call me, give me the full story, and legit are like, yeah, she said she's going to do it. And I'll help them and tell them, I'm not a therapist, but I'll do the training or do whatever they need and tell them what questions to ask. Hey, if you can't, I will. Put them on the phone. What do you want from me? Call this number. In the very end, they're like, I don't think it's that bad yet.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
please do not call me next week with a different story.
There's a myth, and I had this thought, Susie, that if I'd asked my son, are you thinking about taking your life?
Yeah.
I didn't ask him that because I thought, and this is a myth, that if I asked him that, I was planting the seed.
That was the number one myth.
And I, obviously should have asked. But I never, because of him losing his dad, our thought, my daughter and I, was that, and he had told her literally he would never, ever, ever do that. Is that he's fine. He's going to get through this.
Well, you believe that, right? Because he has seen the repercussions of the other side. Right. But statistically, it increases their rates a lot higher, children. Yeah. So,
Knew that later too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you decided to start working with teens.
I did.
And started getting all sorts of certifications.
I did. Yeah. 2017 started it.
I'm like, wow, I am way undereducated.
No, I know. It's funny. I'm like, by the time I'm done paying for these and the hours, I can have a PhD.
Yeah.
But it started back early 17 more with the QPR, getting certified. I took the training, then I was like, I've got to do more.
What's QPR?
That's the question, persuade, refer. That's the suicide prevention and recognition training that I'm certified to teach.
Okay.
So it's like a 45-minute. I do them often. I offer them free. Anybody I work with, I offer it to the family. I want them to do that because it's important. That's what teaches them the myths. It teaches them what question to ask, how to ask it, where to go for resources. It teaches all of that. It's fantastic. So,
can you give us a little taste of that?
Yeah. So, question number one is how to ask the question. So, obviously, for me, very simple. I just say, keep it simple, keep it the best. Are you thinking about suicide? Period. Now, depending on what it is, you can ask maybe a younger child, like, hey, do you ever wish you could go to sleep and never wake up? That's an okay way to ask the question. And then, persuade them. You really want to encourage them. They statistically, once they're asked the question, they typically will answer honestly, as long as you make them feel safe. But when you ask the question, make sure that's it. Ask it and then stop talking. Like, listen. Most people don't listen. You want to like, oh, me too. No, it's not about you.
Right.
They want someone to listen to them. They just need to get it out, people that are in that suicidal state, to know that somebody really is here to potentially offer me hope, because they've lost hope. They feel like there's nothing left to do. There's nothing they can do. So if there's someone that's like, hey, let's try this, they're like, okay, one more attempt, right? Let's try one more thing. And I was reading, so Dr. Paul Quinnett created QPR. He has this book. It's the Suicide, the Final Decision. And within that book, he talks about working with one of his patients, and he tells them, he's like, look, I'm not saying you can't have suicide as an option, just not today. Let's talk through it. And then if you just each day, you just talk through it, then there's always hope, and hope builds. So there's that. And then just, making sure the person gets the help they need, whether you refer them to the hospital or go with them. Go with them is best.
Right.
But if you can't, you do what's next. Make the call for them.
Right.
And then just stay checking up on them if you can. I would say those are some of the best tips. And then, of course, the myths. We talked about one of them.
Right.
You're not going to plant the seed.
Right.
If someone's thinking about it, they're already thinking about it. You're not going to encourage them to do it. And I would just, I'm happy to share all that. Just log in and get yourself a free session.
Yeah, and this is great. A great resource, not just for teens, but for anybody, really.
Yeah.
When you see them start turning around, do you start encouraging them? This is where my work comes in, on having a vision for their life. Can you see 3 years out? What do you want your life to look like? Can you give me a picture of what do you hope to be doing? I did this with some high schoolers a couple months ago. It was interesting. I got them to think about, okay, how old will you be in about 3 years? Because nobody ever asks them that, to think, And for them to start seeing, oh my gosh, I'm going to be like 21 years old or whatever. I'm going to be out there. What do I want my life to look like?
Right.
That's what I want to help them get anchored in is a vision beyond where they are right now.
Yeah.
And to then be able to take that vision, build some hope around it, and take some baby steps in that direction. Right?
Yeah.
Do you do some of that work with them too?
I do. That's my mentorship program.
Okay.
So I do 16-week and a 10-month.
Okay.
Working with 12 to 19-year-olds.
Okay.
And that's really all I really try to focus on that first bit is getting that, their values, their core values are important, and then learning a purpose, because if you can kind of define your purpose that's aligned with your core values, it really helps you make good choices.
You get an anchor.
Yep. And then let them know that it will change. As you grow and learn things and meet people, your values might change, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
You don't have to be stuck with who you are today, but you need to know who you are
so glad you're
today.
telling them that, because when I did this work with these high schoolers, I asked them to tell me how they felt about it, about thinking about their vision. And they told me two things. One, they told me they were very afraid of taking any step in any one direction, because what if they went in that direction and they failed at it, or it wasn't what they really wanted? They thought, big mistake. And they thought, I can't live with that. They won't even take a step because they're afraid of failing, or they're going to get stuck there. I said, guys, I'm 61 years old and I'm still trying to figure it out.
That's what I say.
But they think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell them all the time, I'm like, look, same, just like you said. I'm like, you know what? There are women that because NAWBO, one of our big things is what we're noticing now, the new next gen, if you will, is actually women going into that second career.
Right.
They're in there. I'm 49. This is all kind of new, right, over the last 5 years. My entire career before was bookkeeping and accounting for construction. I mean, totally different.
Yes.
But it's what we do. You're finding finally finding our purpose instead of just doing what we do. And a lot of people in their 50s and stuff. And I've, in some of my classes, I've been with doctors. They've been through full doctorate psychologists, and they're like, I'm shutting down my practice and I'm going into coaching, or I'm going into mentorship, because that's where I feel aligned.
Right.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Because what they have to do, and my mom told me this once, she said, you can't look at that relationship as it's wasted. Because I was like, I wasted so many years on him, right? And she's like, no, you learned so much.
Yeah.
Now move on.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
Like, right. So it's okay.
It is.
Whatever they decide to do, these kids, they're going to learn something.
Yeah.
And then they'll realize that's not it, or that, hey, that doesn't resonate with me. Cool. Now you're closer to knowing what your purpose is.
I'm so glad you are teaching this, Suzi, because, you and I talked about this.
It aligns with me.
It does, and with me, because we have an educational system that seriously needs to be restructured.
Yeah.
And it's people like you and me and other organizations that I'm learning about that are coming into the kids at a younger age and saying, hey, it's not a cookie cutter thing.
Yeah.
Like, I was told, I grew up wanting to be a singer and an actress.
Okay.
And so my family was like, that's super cute.
Yeah.
But you're going to get a degree. and it's because none of them had it. So, they thought this was the best. So, and I'm not judging them for that. They, of course, loved me very much.
Yeah.
I'm happy for the degree that I got and the education. But I followed that path. By the time I was coming out of high school, I met my husband in high school. We went to college together, got the business degrees, did the 9-to-5 job,
Okay.
But I was miserable in that mold.
Yeah.
And I was blessed to have a mentor come into my life and say, you can create your life to look like whatever you want. You just have to sit down now and get super clear on what that is.
Yeah.
And that's the day that everything changed for me.
Oh, that's amazing.
Is that I sat and went, okay, I'm not good. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to work from home. I want to raise my kids, having a business from home. I want to be a leader, teaching other people the importance of vision. And so this is now, 30-some years later.
And I bet through that, if you think back to that very beginning to now, I bet it's so different. Like, it's evolved.
So different.
So different.
Yeah. But the one thing that hasn't changed for me, Suzi, is I know my purpose.
That's good.
And that's the key for me, for most people, is that they don't know who they are and what their purpose is.
Right.
And so what happens is they start following everybody else's plan for them, and they're not happy. And they don't know how to change it.
Well, like you said, they're just kind of, the kids are taught, go to school, go to high
Right.
school. And even now, which I have really hard time with parents insisting their kids do the AP and do this and do that. I'm like, why?
Right.
There's two reasons. The workload is so much more stressful. Secondly, what the parents don't realize, and I wish the schools would teach them when they're signing their kids up for this nonsense, is, I mean, I get it. If you're bored and you can do it easy breezy, yeah, do it. Don't be bored.
Right.
But these kids are taking it because it's a keep up with the Joneses, or it's, oh, I think I need the next college. What they don't realize is if you get a B in the AP class versus an A in another class, it drops your GPA, and now you're out of the running for some of the scholarships you would have probably got, or school probabilities, if you would have just got the A's all the way through
Right.
and struggled for a B. They don't get it.
Right.
And that pressure's insane.
Yeah.
And they're starting in junior high. The girls are going to junior high, my twins, and they're like, oh, yeah, so-and-so's taking AP. And I'm like, oh, God, I wish I could talk to her mother.
Yeah.
Like, please don't do that to her. Like, let them
Maybe we should just take her my card at school.
I know, right? Yeah. It's so funny because the girls' friends are a lot of my little guinea pigs with new workshops. Their moms are like, yeah, take her.
Yeah.
They're all happy. Some of the moms will sit in to the workshops. But yeah, so
It's interesting.
12-year-olds are, they're a treat.
Yes. I love that. Well, I love everything that you're about. I love
Thank
how
you.
open you are about your own struggles with suicide, and being able to share that openly with people, and hopefully anybody, I hope, is listening to this that struggles with that, that is getting some hope here from you as to some things that helped you get through that and change that. Is there anything you want to add to that? If there is somebody that's just like, okay, Susie, like,
you know,
what?
just again, give it one more day. Talk to somebody. You don't even have to fully say exactly what you're thinking at the moment, but it would be lovely if you did. But reach out. You know, tell someone. I still, on occasion, I don't struggle with that, but I struggle. I have a few good friends. I call them my mental health buddies. I'll just throw a text out. I'm like, I am struggling today. And the support I get from those three, whether we even talk or not, but just the texting, is amazing.
Yeah.
It helps me. So just find the one and just say, hey, you know what? I'm just, on occasion, I might just throw out, I am struggling. And no, I need you to support me.
Right.
Even if you come up with a keyword. I have one friend, sometimes I know she goes in a dark hole. I'm like, I haven't heard from you. I'll just like show up and I'm like, we need to go for a walk because I don't think you've been outside in a few weeks.
Yeah.
So just find someone.
Yeah.
Because they're going to understand. People aren't going to think you're weird or crazy.
And that's another big thing that just popped in my head. There's so much pride,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And not wanting to show people that you're struggling. It's a huge problem with my husband and my son.
Yeah.
I think it's very common in men, especially,
Yes.
to not ask for the help because
Yeah.
of that. And I just really want to encourage you to keep working with the teens that you're doing.
you.
And any way that I can support
I
you.
hope that, yes, we should talk about the summit.
You know what?
That annual summit I want to put together for
Okay.
next year.
We're on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't want to do it alone.
Me either. We can't.
It's too big of a thing.
And you know
so-
what I need people to understand too is if you do go get help or see a therapist and it doesn't work, that doesn't mean all therapists don't work. You know, not everybody's your best friend.
Right.
Find the next person.
Right.
Just keep finding people. Keep trying. Everybody's going to learn different from somebody, just like you. Working together in the same field is amazing because there's kids that are going to love and resonate with what you have to say, or they might grab something best from you versus me.
Right.
Just like mentoring kids. It's easy. I can tell kids the same thing their mom says, but they're going to hear it from me and go, oh, but mom says it, and they're like,
Yeah.
shut up, mom.
Yeah, truth. And that's why there needs to be more of you.
Yeah, more of you, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. Any last words of encouragement you want to give to anybody listening, especially if you have a young adult, you are a young adult,
Yeah.
raising a teen.
You matter and you have a purpose. I mean, let's help you find it. Let's discover it, whatever you need to do. But yeah, you have a purpose and there's a meaning and a reason you're here.
Yeah.
And it might take you a little while to find it, but that's kind of the fun journey too.
Yeah. And it's okay
Yeah.
to just take a step. Mm-hmm. That's the whole
Yep.
purpose of life, is just take a step, take a
Yep.
step, take a step.
Yeah, and don't be afraid if you go a route and it doesn't work. That's cool. You learned something. Go the next, take the next T in the road.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Love
it's
it.
fine.
So how can people find you?
SuziFreeman.com.
And it's yeah, we'll put that in the show
Yeah.
notes, of course. But I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Really,
Thanks for
really
having me.
appreciate it. And I know you and I are going to keep talking a lot
Yes.
more about this. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode of Moving Through and Beyond. I'm Carey Conley, your host, and I'm here to remind you to keep looking up. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. In order to be successful on this mission, I can't do it alone. Connect with me at www.careyconley.com, and don't forget to sign up for my weekly Do It On Purpose newsletter. Let's build this life-giving vision movement together to end this epidemic, save lives, and create purpose.